In my heart, God knows I'm innocent. These are the words of Romero Alberto Greedy Valerio, whom prosecutors during a trial in 2022 contended was a gang leader of the infamous 18th Street gang in California. With the name of Greedy, he was found guilty on 10 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of first-degree murder of a human fetus in connection with the May 3rd, 1993 blaze at a 69-unit complex in the Westlake area of Los Angeles. Going back a year prior before the conviction, Valerio took the stand, and it was 29 years after that fire when he was quoted as saying, "I do remember that day." He had been eating with friends at a burger stand in Westlake when fire trucks and ambulances screamed by. He said they followed the lights and sirens and saw the fire. A 3-story apartment building was belching smoke. People were jumping off balconies. He said he helped carry victims across the street and laid them on the pavement. It was, he quoted, a horrible incident. But Romero Valerio wasn't testifying as a witness. He was on trial for the deaths of the 7 children and 3 women who perished during that day in 1993 in one of LA's deadliest fire. Now 49, Greedy, or Valerio, his hair had grayed and he carries the beginnings of a paunch. Dressed in a collared shirt and wearing a pair of thick glasses, he could have been mistaken for a librarian. But 3 decades ago, he belonged to the notorious and violent 18th Street, a gang that controlled one of Los Angeles' most lucrative marketplaces for heroin and crack cocaine. It was the drugs, the need to sell them without interruption, and to keep money flowing to the gang's imprisoned bosses, that led Romero, along with Juan Termite Romero, another gang leader, who was brought out of witness protection, who had been declared a fugitive in 2016 for this same fire that claimed the lives of women and children. Romero was once also a leader of that 18th Street gang, shaking down drug dealers on the streets of Westlake in the 90s. But after being targeted for death by Greedy Valerio, Romero became the government's star witness in a racketeering case that sent dozens of associates to prison. Romero went on to disappear into witness protection, living under an assumed name far from his old neighborhood. But LA County prosecutors have brought the 57-year-old out of hiding, alleging him, along with Valerio and a few others, had started that fire in that Westlake complex, killing 7 children and 3 women. 2 of them were pregnant. Romero appeared in court in a downtown LA courtroom where he deferred entering a plea to 12 counts of murder. Dressed in an orange jumpsuit, the short man with thinning hair hardly resembled the gang member who stared into a camera decades earlier, a thick gold chain draped above the words, "Baby, I'm for real." Romero, Valerio, and others claimed the lives of Lancy Mateo, 1 year old, Jesus Camargo, 4 years old, Jose Camargo, 4 years old, Rosalia Camargo, 6 years old, Yadira Verdugo, 6 years old, William Verdugo, 8 years old, Levar Verdugo, 10 years old, Rosalia Ruiz, 21 years old, Olga Leon, 24 years old, and Alejandra Robledo, 29 years old. Ruiz and Leon were also pregnant. This shed light on the widespread gang violence that has always plagued Los Angeles. But the 18th Street gang is not like every other small gang or even large gang in LA. They're a transnational, multi-state, multi-country gang whose rivals include Motto Salvatrucha, or more commonly known as MS-13.
Well, tonight, a big break in one of the worst cases of arson in LA history. After 24 years of searching, police now have arrested 3 for allegedly starting an apartment fire that killed 10. KCAL 9's Rachel Kim spoke with a woman who still remembers that horrific scene. She's live at LAPD headquarters with the very latest tonight. Rachel?
Well, Jeff, today the district attorney said that these arrests were possible because detectives here at the LAPD never gave up and never forgot. Tonight, we spoke with a woman who says she never forgot the day she and her family helped save lives.
The building is burning, and the lady is live over there, and she tried to jump,
Out of fear of retaliation, this woman we'll call Linda didn't want to be identified, but she wasn't afraid to tell us about the day that remains vivid in her mind.
Very bad, very bad.
Linda points out of her window where she saw flames consuming the Burlington apartments next door in May of 1993. The arson fire killed 7 children and 3 women. 2 were 8 months pregnant. In the window directly across from her, Linda remembers a mother with her 2 children in her arms about to jump out of the window.
No, don't do it.
Soon, Linda, her daughter, and her daughter's friend went outside beneath the woman's window. They told her to let the kids jump so they could catch them.
She dropped the baby. And she said, oh my God. And my daughter take my one baby and the other baby, my daughter friends.
Today, the LAPD announced they arrested these 3 known gang members for starting the fire. Why did they do it? Investigators say they were told to stop dealing drugs at the apartments. So when the manager told them to leave, they came back and set the place on fire.
These cases are all about witnesses. They're all about getting witnesses comfortable enough to testify.
It is a mass murder that required that we never give up.
For Linda, she'll never forget the images of that day, and she says this of the firefighters and police involved in the rescue and resolution of this arson.
They hit her.
They certainly are heroes. Now, the LAPD says there is still a 4th suspect on the loose. They believe he fled the country. Back to you.
Well, it's been nearly 24 years since an arson killed 7 children and 3 women inside a Westlake District apartment building.
Today, LAPD announced they arrested 3 people for starting that fire.
And CBS 2's Dave Lopez is live at police headquarters in downtown LA to tell us more. Dave?
Well, the DA is calling this the worst arson case in the history of the state of California. Behind me is the headquarters of the LAPD, where the elite robbery homicide unit has been working this case. They've hit dead ends, but they never gave up. They got a good lead in 2013. They followed it, and over the weekend, they made the arrest 24 years later. Nearly 24 years after this intentionally set apartment fire killed 7 children and 3 women, 2 who were 8 months pregnant, law enforcement says they know who did it.
It is a mass murder that required that we never give up.
In custody, detectives say 3 known gang members, Romero Valero, Joe Monge, and Johanna Lopez. And there's a 4th suspect still on the loose. Detectives would not reveal his name because he's out of the country. Detectives say this fire was set in May 1993 because Valero, Monge, and Lopez were told to stop dealing their drugs at the Burlington apartments. The new manager said, "Get out of here." And, according to the allegations, they came back and set the place on fire.
These cases are all about witnesses. They're all about getting witnesses comfortable enough to testify.
24 years ago, the area around the Burlington apartments was ruled by gangs. Gangs that terrorized everyone, and people were simply afraid to talk, even when children and pregnant women die. But times have changed.
People are with age are realizing that they're getting closer and things that they want to come forward with that they wouldn't have at that point in time.
Almost 1,100 murders occurred that year, over 150 of them in the Rampart district where this happened.
No one would say how many witnesses did come forward or if there is any physical evidence. But what is very clear, after 24 years, the influence of this gang is no longer what it once was, and people are no longer afraid to speak up.
This case was so horrific and had such an impact on anyone who touched it that we never gave up.
And the DA says the evidence is there. They have the 3 people in custody who set this fire. And with the exception of the 1 suspect who was out of the country, the other 3 suspects arrested, according to the LAPD, just lived in this area. 1 in Palmdale, 1 in Montebello. Did not try to run, did not try to hide. They just figured that no one would ever talk. They were wrong. Back to you in the studio.
Los Angeles City Attorney James Juan has declared legal war on a South Los Angeles street gang. Under a state nuisance abatement law, he filed a lawsuit against members of the 18th Street gang, accusing them of turning a 17-square block area into a war zone.
We are trying to enjoin this gang from engaging in the kind of nuisance activities, the precursors to criminal activities that have intimidated, harassed, and terrorized this neighborhood. It's needed because crime has been increasing significantly in this area. This gang has been a significant part of that crime problem in the neighborhood.
Police say there have been over 500 serious crimes in the area in the last 14 months, including 7 murders.
In other news, a judge has ordered members of a vicious gang not to congregate on the streets of a Los Angeles neighborhood. The 18th Street Gang reputedly has up to 20,000 members throughout California. As Jerry Bowen reports, this new ruling has many residents of that area at odds with the ACLU.
It was the worst of news for LA's 18th Street Gang.
It means that we can't hang around with our friends that we grew up with, you know. We all friends in the neighborhood, you know.
Judges order that bans 3 or more gang members from gathering in public anywhere in Jefferson Park, a working-class neighborhood terrorized by the gang and scarred by its signature, the number 18. Members named in a preliminary injunction can't mingle outside the gang's hangout. The judge said they can't even walk down the street together. Violators would be in contempt of court and could go directly to jail.
That man trying to set his own rules, you know what I mean? But it ain't going down like that, not in the neighborhood, you know what I mean?
For years, residents of this area have put up with intimidation, rampant graffiti, even having their own cars stripped in their driveways. The injunction is aimed at stopping all that.
Just in the corner, not too long ago, someone was either shot or stabbed. Then 1 block down, there was another person who, Lord knows what happened, but I knew something happened because there was some candles and flowers.
Martha, afraid to show her face, says Jefferson Park is a tough place to live.
Can you imagine it being safe?
I don't think it's something that's, you know, it's ever going to happen. It could get better, but I don't think they're going to control it altogether.
But Patty Flores, mother of 2, sees hope for the future.
Well, if the gangs can't hang out together, that's what the judge is saying they can't do.
That would be wonderful. Will help a lot, and especially the little kids that they are learning from them, because there's a bunch of kids here that they want to follow their steps.
The sweeping Los Angeles court order follows a model established in San Jose, California 4 years ago and just upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court, a ban on gang gatherings there that resulted in a 75% drop in crime. Still, there are critics.
It criminalizes things that aren't otherwise crimes and reduces our protections against invasion of our civil liberties and civil rights.
What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to another episode of Green Lit Gang TV. Much love, much appreciation. Thank you guys so much for checking out the channel. Please hit the bell, like, subscribe, comment. It means a lot. It helps so much. I don't like to talk about myself too much on this channel or, pour me anything, but I do work a ton of hours, and sometimes it's really hard, man. Like, I'm doing this video, started about 6 a.m. and trying to knock it out, but not I'm not saying this for any other reason other than just the support means a ton. That's all I'm trying to say. The support means a ton. I love what I do. I would never complain about it. You guys are amazing. I appreciate it. We're going to be jumping right into it, though. We're going to be covering the 18th Street Gang, also known as Barrio 18, Mata 18, or actually I kind of like this, just simply 18 in North America. It's a multi-ethnic, largely Central American and Hispanic American transnational criminal organization. Started as a street gang in L.A., and it's one of the largest transnational criminal gangs in LA with 30 to 50,000 members between the U.S., Mexico, and Central America. It's also allied, and I'm like, of course it is, right? These guys are no joke with the Mexican mafia. Okay, like we talked about in the intro, one of their biggest, I believe their biggest rival is MS-13. And the reason I say that is because they're each extremely powerful, each transnational. And when you say transnational, that means you're not just crossing state borders here, you're crossing country borders, okay? You're going into, like they said, Latin America, that's all Latin America, but I'm just saying Central America, Mexico, U.S. I know that, I'm sure they have presence in Canada and maybe even other places. It is no joke. And that's why I feel like with a rival, you got to kind of be on even playing fields. If you've got one organization with, presences in all over different countries, and an organization that's maybe just got a couple blocks, it doesn't really sound as good as, two really heavy hitters, heavyweights in the game. So it was formed in the Rampart district of L.A. in the 1960s. Okay, I just want to give a little background. By Mexican Americans and other immigrant youths who were not accepted into the existing Hispanic gangs. And that's always how a lot of these seem come to power is, man, you're not accepted. You're mistreated. You're bullied. Maybe a violent crime happened to you or your family. And you're going to go, you know what? My homies, we're going to make sure that never, ever happens again. And we are going to be the most brutal, the most violent. And that's how these stakes are always getting upped, okay? So some were originally part of Clanton 14, but 14, but wanted to make a separate clique called Clan 18th Street and allow immigrants the opportunity to join. And that's what I really want to make clear, okay? And I've gotten this in comments between my Norteño Sereno videos when it talks about, presences and blocks. And, some of you guys, I have comments where guys are going back and forth arguing. And there is discrimination between Hispanic Americans that were born and raised here. They're more culturally diverse. They're kind of more up with the times. And people that are coming straight from Mexico, straight from nothing, living in the worst human conditions. They do get mistreated by Hispanics up here that are born and raised. It's just a real deal. And I don't know a ton about that other than just in the area I live. There is a very, very large Hispanic population. There's Norteños, there's Serranos, Paisa, being in county jail. There was a big group, people were running Paisa. You had the Norteños, you had Serranos. Within the jail, obviously, they're separated. But the point is, there is mistreatment that goes on amongst races, okay? So that's why you see this. And they wanted to start their own thing, okay? Which led to the formation of the 18th Street Gang, okay? The two gangs, all right? This is like where the 18th Street and the Clanton 14 have been bitter rivals ever since. 18th Street grew by expanding its membership to other nationalities and races. And it was among the first multiracial, multi-ethnic gangs in LA. That's what I'm talking about. That is so big. I wanted to give a history, but I don't think you guys realize how big that is to accept other races, other ethnicities in. But what that does is, if you can set aside your differences and set aside your egos, you can grow to heights and to power that none of these other little local cliques could ever imagine. Because if you're a local neighborhood where, only the family, only people we know, you got to be from, 3rd Ave to 10th Ave. If you're not from there, you're out. Well, you pigeonhole yourself, okay? You put yourself in a box. Whereas these guys were going, okay, you know what? We're going to grow this, and we're not only going to dominate our little neighborhood, we're going to try to take over states in certain areas of different countries. And at the end of the day, that means money, guys. Money, power, respect. Okay? MPR, the three things that matter most in this life. Whether you're a man, whether you're a woman, if you have drive, if you have motivation, money, power, respect. Okay? In the beginning, they were largely made up of second-generation Hispanics, but as the 18th Street Gang began to battle with more established Hispanic gangs, they began to recruit outside the Hispanic community. That's what I'm talking about. They did what they had to do. There are approximately 200 separate autonomous gangs operating under the same name within separate barrios. San Fernando Valley, specifically North Hollywood, the San Gabriel Valley, South Bay, Riverside, East LA, South LA, Hollywood, Downtown LA, Northeast LA, Orange County, San Bernardino County, just all over. In the early 2000s, the FBI initiated wide-scale raids against known and suspected gang members, wrapping up hundreds of arrests across the country. 18th Street started as a Mexican-American gang, but the gang also became Central America as it started to recruit more members of more ethnic groups. When Central American gang members were arrested in the U.S., they were then deported back to Central America, where the gang arose not just in El Salvador, okay, but also in Honduras and Guatemala, becoming one of the most violent gangs in the region, okay? And what happens with this? They become a bitter rival of MS-13, as both gangs sought supremacy in Central America. Members of 18th Street are mainly Hispanic, Salvadorian, Honduran, and Guatemalan, but the gang does have members from other parts. And get this, 18th Street influences have recently been spotted in Belize and El Salvador. A faction called the Revolutionaries split off the 18th Street in 2005, becoming rivals with the other members, who became known as the Serranos. It's just crazy, guys. I get into this. That's why I love making this content. That's why I love giving it to you guys. I know I'm not perfect. I know my channel, my editing skills are mid, maybe below mid. but I love bringing you guys the content. And yeah, so the majority of 18th Street cliques operate throughout Southern California, but are active in other states and internationally as well. LA gang members began migrating to other areas outside of California and started to establish their own gangs. 18th Street gangs are active in 44 cities in 20 U.S. states. That number might even be up more by now, as well as internationally reported in, check this out, guys, Australia, Canada, England, France, Germany, Lebanon, Peru, obviously Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and Venezuela. But those first few, Australia, Canada, England, France, and Germany, I was like, wow. Okay, but here's the thing. When you are that big, okay, when you are so big, all right, the one good thing, if you're a smaller, tighter knit gang, right, is you can have a lot more control. One person or one or two people, this is how we do things. We do not break from this mold. So far and so forth. Well, when you're in 10 different countries and 50 plus cities, things are going to get ran differently wherever you go. And that's what it talks about here. The organization of the 18th Street gang differs from location to location. With the gang being spread so vastly nationally and internationally, it is difficult to have a universal organizational structure. The gang is organized in such a way that allows for leadership at every level. One common organizational structure seen used by Barrio 18 is as follows. At the very top are palaberos, or its leaders. And I know I butchered that, I'm sorry. A majority of these members are in prison, but still help run the gang by coordinating all criminal activities. Palabreros also exist outside of the prison and are known as en la libre. Lastly, there are civilians who are known as collaborators. They are not officially gang members, but they are responsible for helping the gang with small jobs, like obtaining intelligence and moving or holding illicit goods. The 18th Street gang also designates positions in their organizational structure in another way. In this structure, at the top are the leaders known as toros, meaning bull. Underneath each toro or bull is a clica, which is led by a homie. Under each homie are the soldados, meaning soldiers. Outside of the prisons, Barrio 18 is organized into divisions based on territory called canchas. The gang is horizontal in structure, allowing for a more decentralized approach to things. All right. Although overall 18th Street gang is not very organized compared to some other modern day gangs, this is interesting. Well, it's not really interesting. It's kind of what you'd expect when they say women were also able to join the gang. But there's a huge caveat to that. They are treated poorly. The women that joined the gang had 3 ways to do so, and I bet before I even say it, you can probably guess. First, an 18-second beating. Second was, we don't need to go into it, you have to do stuff with some of the guys. And, excuse me. And the last option was being the girlfriend or wife of a member that could potentially lead to a membership over time. I'm going to go option number 3. If I had a choice. But the women were expected to take on male-associated roles, often involving violence, as well as playing more of a mother role by caring for children and taking care of the sick. So in a way, it's kind of like they're giving out franchises, right? These guys are McDonald's, man. Shit, these guys are McDonald's. It's like, okay, yeah, we're going to let you do your member. Here's kind of a rough outline of what we expect from you. But follow that rough outline and do your thing accordingly, all right? The most lucrative activity in the 18th Street gang is a street-level distribution of, you can guess, cocaine, marijuana, heroin. It says actually on the heroin a lesser extent, and I do think that is differences in some gangs. I think some gangs it's more prevalent, in other gangs it's less. I was going to say maybe because the area they're in, but it's like, well, wait a minute, these guys are everywhere, so it might just be how it's been. I really don't know. If you guys know more about that, please comment down below, because I know the money tends to be in the heroin and the methamphetamine and definitely cocaine. Drug prices are going through the roof. Obviously, they're involved in auto theft, carjacking, drive-by shootings, extortion, ID, fraud, robbery, assault, and homicide. Okay? Now, this is interesting, though. Special Agent George Rodriguez of the Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives, ATF, okay, described the 18th Street gang as, quote, one of the most violent street gangs and one of the most prolific in the United States, okay? Cars are stolen, homes are burglared by the gang routinely. On average, check this out. Someone in LA County is assaulted, this is crazy. Someone in LA County is assaulted or robbed by 18th Streeters every day. The gang has left a bloody trail at a pace 3 times that of many of the city's most active gangs. Okay? Now, we're going to get into this crazy, crazy story about this fire that I was talking about. So, yeah, I don't even know. It's really, really sad, especially with the victims, okay? Basically, at this Westlake Apartment Complex, okay? And it took forever for these things to finally come to light, for people to be held basically accountable. And it was 18th Street Gang and some of their dealers and some people that were working for them that made all this happen. So we jump to May 3rd, 1993. Now, you got to understand, with 18th Street Gang, they had areas that they had serious drug operations going on, okay? So you've got Juan Termite Romero, a leader. He's the one we talked about in the intro with the name, with the quote on his chest, "Baby, I'm for real," okay? Now, he was the one that basically got wrapped up in a separate criminal case, becomes an FBI, federal informant, and disappears into witness protection for years. Because, okay, remember, the crime happened in 93, okay? The crime happens in 1993. But then what ends up happening is all this stuff starts coming to light. Now, Termite Romero's boss, Romero Alberto Greedy Valerio, said he was the boss of basically this entire operation. Okay, he took this to trial. That's what I was talking about at the very beginning. He's the one that says after he gets found guilty, okay, he gets found guilty back in 2022, okay, but then he gets sentenced in 2023, all right? And he's the one that says, I know I'm innocent. Well, he ends up, Valerio, Greedy Valerio, he was from Palmdale, all right? And all these guys are in their 50s. He gets sentenced to life in prison for the 1993 fire. And the thing really is, okay, you got to understand, it's not just that, yes, it claimed 10 people's lives, but it was women and children. 2 of the women were pregnant, okay? And yeah, it's absolutely no joke what ends up happening with all this. So we have this house fire,